Every working man knows the feeling. You've given a place 9 years of your best, never missed a day, carried them on your back, made them rich. And then one morning, you open the newspaper and see your boss threatening you in public, like you're some rookie who showed up late. No phone call, no respect, just a deadline with your name on it. Most men swallow it, because most men have no choice. Jim Brown was not most men. And in July of 1966, he showed the whole world what it looks like when a man values his dignity over his paycheck. You probably know the outline of this story already. Jim Brown, the greatest running back who ever lived, walked away from football at the absolute peak of his career to go make movies in Hollywood. That's the version that made it onto the trading cards and the highlight reels. What it leaves out is the real reason he left: a public threat from his own owner, a handwritten letter mailed from London, and a decision that had almost nothing to do with the movies and everything to do with a man refusing to be pushed around. This is the story, history simplified into the line he chose Hollywood. It deserves better than that. To understand why Jim Brown did what he did, you first need to understand exactly what the Cleveland Browns were about to lose. Brown entered the NFL in 1957 and simply broke the sport over his knee. He was built like no back anyone had seen before, 6'2", 230 pounds. But with the speed of a much smaller man and a habit of getting up slowly after every tackle, like he was barely hurt, just to remind the defense he'd be coming back the very next play. In 9 seasons, he led the league in rushing 8 times. 8 out of 9. He was the NFL's most valuable player 3 times. In 1965, at 29 years old, in a 14-game season, he rushed for 1,544 yards, a full 677 yards more than the closest man behind him, a rookie sensation out of Chicago named Gale Sayers. Nobody was catching him. Nobody was slowing him down. And in 9 seasons of pro football, through an era when running backs got hit on every single play by men who wanted to end their careers, Jim Brown never missed a game, not one. Off the field, he was already becoming something the NFL had never had to deal with before: a black superstar who refused to just play the sport and stay quiet about everything else. He was deep into building what would become the Negro Industrial Economic Union, working to create real economic opportunity for black communities across the country. He'd already started acting in films during the off-season, appearing in a Western called Rio Conchos in 1964. Football was enormous to Jim Brown. It was not the whole of him. And that distinction is the key to everything that happened next. By early 1966, Brown was in London, filming a war picture called The Dirty Dozen, playing a soldier alongside a cast of Hollywood heavyweights. It was part of a 3-picture deal with a major studio, a serious commitment, not a summer hobby. But movie productions run on their own clock, not the NFL's. Filming fell behind schedule, and as training camp approached back in Ohio, it became clear that Jim Brown might not make it back to Hiram College in time. Understand the position Brown was actually in. He had not even signed his contract for the 1966 season yet. Under the rules of football at the time, there was no free agency. A player was tied to his team whether he liked the terms or not. But there was also no signed deal on paper compelling him to be anywhere at all. He had told Modell as much. He was leaving for London, and if the team truly needed him, he would consider coming back early. That was the understanding, or so Brown thought. Instead, Brown's owner, Art Modell, took it public. He told the newspapers, in plain language, that no veteran player, and he specifically named Jim Brown, would be given permission to report late to training camp. He set a deadline, check-in time on Sunday, July 17th. Miss it, Modell said, and he'd have no choice but to suspend Brown without pay. He even added, almost as an aside, that he understood the difficulties of the movie business, having spent time in the industry himself. It didn't matter. The message was unmistakable. Show up on my schedule, or else. And Jim Brown read every word of it from 4,000 miles away in a newspaper before anyone from the Browns organization had picked up a phone to talk to him directly. For 9 straight seasons, Jim Brown had never given the Browns a single reason to doubt him. He'd played hurt. He'd played historic. He'd made that franchise the most feared team in football and put more money in Art Modell's pocket than any other player on the roster. And what he got in return in the summer of 1906 was a public deadline, the kind of ultimatum you hand to a rookie you don't trust, not to the greatest player the league had ever produced. He didn't call a press conference to fire back. He didn't threaten a lawsuit. Jim Brown sat down and wrote a letter. It was mailed from London, in his own hand, addressed to Art Modell. In it, he laid out his decision as final, not a negotiating tactic, not a bluff of his own, but a closed door. He explained that this was about the future he wanted for himself, for his family, and, in his own words, for his race. And then he added something that cut sharper than any threat could have. He told Modell he was sorry to see him make the public statements he'd made, because in the end, nobody had won anything from them except the newspapermen who got to print the fight. He said, plainly, that he seemed to have more faith in Modell than Modell had shown in him. He signed the letter the same way he'd signed 100 letters before it. 4 simple words that said everything about the kind of man he still believed himself to be, even in that moment. Your friend, Jim. There was a second letter, too, one that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most telling document in this entire story. Brown wrote separately to his head coach, Blanton Collier, a man he genuinely respected. He told Collier not to worry about the running game. Keep Ernie Green blocking the way he always had, Brown wrote, and hand the football to a young back on the roster who was about to become something special, Leroy Kelly. Jim Brown, at the absolute height of his own career, used his exit to point the Browns toward his own successor. Kelly would go on to a Hall of Fame career of his own. That's not the move of a man storming out in anger. That's the move of a man who still cared about the team, even while walking away from its owner. On July 14, 1966, the world found out. Brown sat for a press conference on the set of The Dirty Dozen, dressed in army fatigues for the film, a mock tank parked behind him as cameras rolled. He unfolded a piece of paper and read from it, calm, measured, almost gentle. His original intention, he said, had been to play the 1966 season. But due to circumstances, he said, that was no longer possible. No shouting, no scene. Just a 30-year-old man at the peak of his sport, ending it on his own terms, on a movie set 3,000 miles from the stadium where he had built his legend. Here's what nobody in Cleveland saw coming. Art Modell had drawn a line assuming Jim Brown needed the Browns more than the Browns needed him. He assumed wrong. Brown had leverage. Nobody had ever tested before, a movie career, a growing platform in the civil rights movement, and a level of dominance so complete that walking away from it, rather than being told when and how to return to it, was itself the whole point. Brown would later tell a Sports Illustrated writer, just one day after that press conference, exactly what he planned to do with the rest of his life: advocacy, business, film, laying out a blueprint most professional athletes would not dare to imagine for themselves for another 50 years. He was not running from football toward Hollywood. He was running toward a bigger version of himself, and the ultimatum simply told him it was time. He left the game holding nearly every rushing record that mattered. To this day, despite playing only 9 seasons, fewer than almost every other back near the top of the record books, Jim Brown still ranks among the very best to ever carry a football. Football historians have spent 6 decades wondering what his numbers would look like if he had played 5 more years. He never once seemed to wonder that himself. He'd made his decision, mailed his letter, and moved forward without looking back. For Jim Brown, there was never really a decision to reconsider once his dignity was on the table. That's the part of this story worth sitting with. Not the movies, not the records, the letter. A man wronged in public chose to answer with quiet, unshakable resolve instead of noise, and made sure, even on his way out the door, that the people he was leaving behind would be taken care of. In an age of players who let their careers be dictated to them, Jim Brown simply refused. He didn't need the last word in the papers. He just needed the last word to be his own. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. This channel is built on the stories the highlight reels leave out, and there's a lot more where this came from. And if you liked seeing a legend refuse to bend to a stubborn Cleveland owner, stick around, because Art Modell wasn't done making history in that city. Years later, he'd fire another legendary figure the franchise was built around, and what he did next split an entire city in half. That story is coming soon.